Good evening and welcome to the Problem of Being Awake. This is the 11th episode of Armchair Monologues. And the subject today is the knock-on effect of lockdown, and the psychological effect of it on all human beings. And how I believe it's one of the things that will go down in history as a turning point for a lot of different parts of civilization doing a lot of different things differently, and not one really has returned back to the lives they led pre-COVID. So just to sort of explain where things went wrong, obviously being locked inside your house by the government and having to do everything online, it took a huge toll on young people's education. There's only so much you can commit to online education, and to do that, you probably have to be an adult, because that's why we have open universities for people later in life who want to get credentials, but didn't at the time, because attention span in young people is at a record low. So social media use is at a record high. It's important to caveat that last one by saying social media use has been at a record high until they set a new record high. It's never had a dip in popularity. There's 5 main platforms. All it's been is this new platform goes up here, stabilizes, new platform here, stabilizes, new platform here, completely nuts. And that's TikTok for you. I try and put my decent videos on there just so they've got something to look at if they're not nuts. But the amount of our Gen Z that were poorly educated, and the amount of Marxist theory that was shaping their education by Marxist intellectual professors, and the woke mind virus took hold of many people. And the reason for that, and the way to stop it, is simply removing CRT, gender theory, queer theory, and transgender story. Remove them from all schools and make a law that those are things to be discussed in private, either with a teacher, a headmaster, or a parent. And one of the big things that's happening around the world in terms of like this new transmania, which did not exist, and it was declassified as a mental health disorder in 2019. Now look at it. I think you could agree transmania is the way everyone's thinking. And a lot of the old school trans people who went from male to female didn't argue there was 100 different other things you could be. They have experienced a lot more, transphobia than they ever did before. And they fought for their rights. These people are demanding more than equal rights, the young ones. And their percentages, it was 0.004% in 2019. And that had been roughly the same for 35 years. And 85% of patients with the right therapy, being told about the experience, 85% choose to stay in the same sex. And often, or most often, enter same-sex relationships. So they were gay. There was no need for the trans thing. Now they're doing it to kids, and it's gone insane. And it's because we've normalized the over-sexualization of our kids in school. There are things in our libraries, school libraries, that would have been considered hardcore porn 10 years ago, and probably still are, actually. There are a couple of books that are in a lot of school libraries which depict things that I would say is porn. And there's no age limit on watching them. When you start indoctrinating 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 14-year-olds, their brains aren't fully formed. So to them, you're an adult, and they will act on what you say when they become an adult. That's the thing, at the age of 18 or 21 in America, or whatever the coming of age is, it's so fixed in your brain that what you're learning from humans all around you subconsciously gets stored in what I call the memory box. And it is Pandora's box that can be opened on adulthood, which accounts for why people who lost someone to alcoholism say they'll never drink again, and then on their 18th birthday onwards they're an alcoholic. It's because they grew up psychologically seeing that adults drink lots of alcohol. So that's their psychological makeup. Now, coming back to lockdown, we had people who were forced online, even though that's where they already were. But schools, suddenly, the integration, the face-to-face integration that they missed, that everybody missed, was essential for their development socially. And so you can see a hiatus in that, a stop in them being able to have face-to-face interactions has led to more social media additives, more avatars, and more people preferring their digital life to their real life. And that is a very sad thing. The other thing that has risen massively, every type of mental health disorder, specifically depression and anxiety, have risen exponentially in the last 5 years to affect such a huge percent of the population. 40+% of the population take pills for mental health issues every year. That is on the rise as well. Now, addiction's gone up by 160% as well. Why? Because some people didn't have families and they like to drink. They weren't necessarily alcoholic beforehand. But if you give someone who doesn't have the family connection, you tell them they have to stay indoors for ages, well, on one night they'll have 3 or 4 beers. Before you know it, and it's happened to so many thousands of people I have actually had interactions with. Before you know it, it's straight down the hatch, and they more and more and more, because there was nothing else to do. So, people were watching television, watching films, work was shut, and now working from home has become a more opulent idea than actually working in a workplace. And again, it misses human connection. So to sort of talk about human connection, it's not just the people you love, but there is a problem there as well. There is less intimacy, basically, on the whole, within married couples, pre and post lockdown. Because of that social distancing and all of the jazz that ran with that, a lot of romanticism went out the window, and people haven't brought it back into their relationships. That's not what the studies are showing. Hopefully they will, but it's then your relationship with your kids, your brothers, your uncles, your aunts. Lots of people and friendships, obviously, and then lots of people let them go. And when the world changed irrevocably, because of the woke ideology's real surge at that point. It had been brewing for a while, but it surged really at lockdown. And suddenly the kids are online all day. You don't know what they're doing, and they could be being groomed to be suffering from some sort of gender dysphoria. Now, the only way a 1% of a population could be trans is completely scientifically impossible, and it's completely biologically impossible. So gender dysphoria had to go from 0.004% to 1%, which is very generous because it's a lot higher than that in most Western countries, is absolutely impossible unless you accept that gender dysphoria was taught, was indoctrinated on them. And the same thing with anti-Semitism. How many white middle-class kids on October the 6th didn't have anti-Semitism in them? But they've been programmed quite well. They've been taught well. Highly university educated. That's where the protests come from, because they're often educated in these Marxist ways with these woke ideologies, and implanted in that is an embedded suggestion of anti-Semitism. So we saw the strangest thing in the world. On the eve of the attack in New York, there was a protest against Israel before they'd even fought back. It was insane. And there's a protest every single day now in New York, at least one. And that's pro-Palestine, and in there I have to say the LGBT community representation percentages are startlingly high. I've heard one that reports 30%. I've heard a few that report kind of 10 to 15% of that the entire makeup of the Free Palestine group is LG or 2S LGBTQIA plus infinity sign. And that's the abbreviated version. I don't want to memorize the whole one. That all happened. So now people live lives differently. They're less likely to shake hands. They're less likely to hug. Certainly intimately less likely to hug. And these things are really important, is getting tactility. So being tactile with the people around you appropriately. So with your wife, obviously, you'd kiss her on the cheek in the morning and you wouldn't make out with her in front of the kids, but at night you might. A lot of people have lost a lot of connections. That goes without saying. All the evidence points towards isolationist people who've really suffered. And the start of that suffering was lockdown, and then human nature and the propagation of radical ideologies took over and turned the world into a place where more people are unhappy than they are contented. And people worry for the future of their kids and the world. I can tell you the climate change thing, that is a hoax by Greta Thunberg. We actually need oil to get any type of regenerative power. The best one is nuclear power by far. It's 20% cheapest. Look up environmentalsuccess.org and Michael Schellenberger, spelledSchen. Shell, Ellen, and then Berger, Berger. If you look him up, he's a climate expert who is very much pro-oil at the moment because of the need for oil to get better energy, cleaner energy. It's important. We can't. How do you think you can build these things without the power of electricity, which needs to be funded at the moment by fossil fuels? And the planet is not anywhere near the end of its life cycle. I mean, a maximum you could say there's a potential risk 10,000 years away. But no one who's listening to this today is going to die because of climate change. And that's a fact. And if you listen to the experts, not the activists. If you listen to activists, you don't get facts. You get convenient narratives, or narratives, false narratives. They like to say, oh, that's a false narrative. For example, Israel's not an apartheid state. I'm sorry, that's a false narrative. Well, I'm sorry, but actually, in the history of the world, where Israel is now, used to be called Judea, and it was built by King David. King Solomon built Bethlehem. All of these, roughly 1,000 years, or maybe between 800 and 1,000 years prior to the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. So no Muslim was even around in that religion at the time that the place that is now Israel was formed for the Jewish people by King David and then King Solomon. So to say that it's not their land is absurd if you look at history. And there's never been a Palestine. And people say, there was a Palestinia in the 3rd century. And you can say back to that, yes, but it was in Syria. And that's different. So yes, there was a Palestinia. There have been Palestinian people. The Arabic name is Philistine. That's where we get our word Philistine. They're seen as outcasts in the Arabic world. And they've had to sort of be nomadic for years. But to say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist on its own land when it created it and built that land before any Muslim ever was a follower of the religion of Islam, then it's just a ridiculous argument. And to say there's a genocide going on when the numbers of innocent people are dropping incredibly because of fantastic military victories by Israel. And, what are you trying to achieve? Not one of them has the guts to do anything other than moan. And really, it all comes down to this. The mental health epidemic got taken over by an ideology that it's not brought anything of good or anything of decency to the world, and instead they've been brainwashed to think so differently that they're able to turn Veterans Day into Martyrs Day. That's what they did. Like with the Veterans Day that just went a couple of days ago. At the colleges, they lamented the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists who have been killed. That's what our university elite college students did. Now, the world can get back on track, but it does require much deeper connections and much more effort to be put in. And when I say connections, the person you speak to at the shop when you get on your way home, make sure you ask them how they are. Because someone might not have spoken to them for half an hour or more and just put stuff on the counter and pay their money. It's important to engage with everybody that you can. The more engagement, the more human connectivity you have, the more contented you will be. It's a simple equation. And working on personal relationships to make sure they are as good and as tactile as appropriate. So with your kids, you always give them a hug and a kiss goodnight and all that. With your brother, you're not going to do that, but shaking hands, big hug, all good. Hugging, actually, if you extend a hug for over 30 seconds and it's all encompassing, it actually releases floods of positive chemicals you wouldn't believe. I challenge anyone to do that with their intimate partner or someone they love. It's really real body-to-body hugging for a minute and not feel the benefits of flooding through the brain chemicals. So we need to get back to a place in society that we can carve out a new normal. It is, I hate that word, but it is kind of the truth, is that there is no real going back. But we can create a more face-to-face, a more tactile, a more friendly, and a more neighbourly way forward, and a new normal that includes all of those things, includes the values of manners, respect, dignity, decency, self-respect, anything you like, really, and really the whole idea of the content of your character being the most important thing about you is the best idea that has ever run the world, but yet everyone's turned every race upside down in this last 4 years. Everything's become racist. And there's a hilarious skit from the Babylon Bee guys where the KKK go, well, they're upset because if everything's racist, they haven't got a job. And it's very funny, but it is true. I've been called racist when I've specifically given background details in the earlier part of that video that would dismiss the possibility of that. But because I'm white and I'm 42 years old and I'm speaking online, I must, by somebody's insane definition, be racist. Now, here's the thing. Racism is simply skin pigmentation that your ancestors got in relation to the distance they moved from the Earth's equator. That's skin colour. We are judging everything by that simple thing. And it's ridiculous. Everyone has equal rights. And the universities now need to start operating a meritocracy where the people who do best at school get to the best positions. Because everyone has the chance to make it. And if you can find a marginalised group, you'll also find everybody in that marginalised group will know people who have made a great success of themselves. So it's impossible to say that no one can do it. It's possible to say that in some minority groups, less people achieve wealth or prosperity, but that would be down to their individual input. They have all the opportunity. There is no problem with opportunity, and they've been talking in the States about equity, and it's the world's biggest disaster. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity means you have to enforce the laws of diversity and inclusion, making sure that 50% of every demographic is represented in every role until you have to have 6% transsexual, 6% gay, and blah, 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 and overall 50% women. Now, that doesn't work in brain surgery where very few women go into that particular type of surgery, but many women are surgeons. So just that particular one, brain surgery. If you DEI'd that and made 50% of them female, that would be a lot of women who didn't want the job. And I'm sorry, if you're going to operate on my brain, I want someone who is the best at doing it, who went for that job. It's a very tough job. Brain surgery and rocket science were always seen as the top jobs. So I want somebody who earned it by merit and wants to do it. And I'll leave it there and just leave you to think about how you and the people around you have been post-lockdown, and try and think back to how they were pre-lockdown, and you'll get an idea of what I mean. But even if you don't get an idea of the past, you can. I've given a kind of idea of how to move forward. And in this video, my other Armchair Monologues videos, like the subconscious mind and depression and things like that, describe in a lot more detail how people would move forward. And I'm about to do one on addiction where I'm going to blow the roof off the stats there, and it's going to be very scary. But this, I firmly believe that lockdown will go down as one of the most significant things to happen in global history. And I think we're living in a world where the last 2 years has provided as much scandal and newsworthy stuff as did the previous 2 decades. And having been watching it and engaged in it as profession, it's unreal the amount of news stories that could have been or would have been or should have been, scandal after scandal, corruption after corruption. The only way that we can fight back is as a group of individuals, not a group. A group is very, very, let's say, I'm going to say the trans people who don't actually have genuine gender dysphoria, which is the majority. They are group identified. They all think the same. It's a psychological impossibility. We all think entirely differently. But they have some of the same aims and things, so they get together in a group. That is not the way to fix society. The way to fix society is a group of individuals decide to take individual responsibility for what's there, for your side of the street, as they say. Clean up your side of the street. Don't care about the person who isn't doing that. So you start small, start at home, start with your intimate relationships, move out to your more familiar relationships, and then move out to your community and see if you can do a bit of good there to bring back some face-to-face cognitive behavior and discussion, because every child and every adult needs that for the rest of their life. And the more it's face-to-face, the better it will be for people. On that note, I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening. I really enjoy making these long videos. If you please leave comments about them and how you found the video, and I'll leave you there. You be lucky. I'll be good. If you'd like to subscribe, share and all that, that's all good YouTube jazz for me. But the video is more important. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you soon.